Hello, my name is Rachel Palmberg. I'm a trauma counselor with the Phumelela Project here in Manzini, and this is our Phumelela Project podcast where we're discussing some mental health issues and the issue of gender-based violence in Eswatini. And I'm really excited for my panelists today who are joining me. If you just want to introduce yourself very briefly and just share where you work, and then we'll dive into this.
Thank you, Rachel. Good day, everyone. My name is Bonkosi Ndlangamandla. I'm the National Coordinator for the Men Engage Eswatini Network. I also serve as the Steering Committee member for Men Engage Africa. I also doubled as the Boys and Men for Change Officer at SWACA.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. My name is Nontobeko Dlamini. I'm an industrial and organizational psychologist. I also am the chairperson of Eswatini Psychology Association. I'm also a researcher that is quite passionate about gender equality, gender-based violence issues, and issues of civic duty in communities.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for doing this, for being here with us today and representing your organizations and just the teamwork behind addressing mental health and GBV here in Eswatini, because we can't do this alone. So we're so grateful for all of you that are involved. I just want to ask, so for those who might not have a clear understanding of what is GBV, what does it even stand for? How would you define it? Whoever wants to share.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe I will try to define GBV in simpler terms. And also for one to understand on day-to-day things that we do and how that can then translate to be GBV. Mm-hmm. So my definition will stem from the fact that with gender-based violence, it can be a tool. I can define it as a tool to reinforce gender inequality. So I can say gender-based violence is a tool that is used to reinforce the gender stereotypes, which is to say, it is amongst the mechanisms that are used by communities or society to reinforce gender stereotypes or that perpetuates gender inequality. So, and also gender equality thrives through the issues of power imbalance, whereby one will use the power that he or she has over the other. And that is made possible through the issue of patriarchy and also the issue of issues of poverty as well, and many other factors. But then it is the issue of power imbalance, and it's perpetuated by power imbalance and also through gender stereotypes that may exist in a given society.
No, that's a really helpful explanation as to what it is. Can you explain a little bit more of what those gender inequalities are and those stereotypes?
Okay, thank you so much. In terms of how societies are structured, there are those things that when roles and responsibilities that are assigned to boys. And whenever you are a boy child, you are expected to, these are the things that you're expected to do. So by the time when you fail to do those things, they use gender-based violence to reinforce or to remind you that, by the way, you are a boy, you are to do this. And by the way, you are a girl, you are expected to cook. That's why men will justify beating their wives whenever they forgot to cook, or maybe there's something wrong about the food that they've cooked. So they will feel justified because that's a role of a woman to cook. That's a role of a woman to be at home, staying at home. So whenever we reach to the workplace, it will seem justified for paying women less salary than a man. So those are some of the examples on how gender-based violence it's a violation of human rights, whereby in relation of your gender or in relation of you are male or female, with an aim, that is done with an aim of reinforcing gender inequality.
May I add to that, Rachel?
Please.
And just to what Bongosi is actually talking about, what people actually don't understand is gender-based violence is not something that is one way. There's an assumption and a misconception that gender-based violence relates to men and their abuse of women, the female gender.
Right.
Yet, there's also the part, it just relates to different genders, male or female,
Okay.
against each other. In terms, and by against, I'm referring to the fact that there is inequality, the fact that as is spoken to issues of power dynamics. So the different types of gender-based violence, for example, can be physical, can be emotional. Physical, we're talking about literally assault, beating a person.
Right.
Then there's emotional, where each gender or each person, individual, can use emotional words, languaging, communication, way of being. So emotional behavior that leads to oppressing the next person. That also has to do with power as well, that a person has over you emotionally. So sometimes you find a parent, a male parent, doing that over a female child.
Okay.
Or a female parent doing that over a male child, where they use emotional abuse, psychological abuse.
Right.
Then there's also gender-based violence can also be found, and it can exist or manifest through financial abuse, where people actually withhold the finances, withhold resources as a way to oppress the next person. So this can happen actually with males, it can happen with females as well.
Right.
And I think we need to decolonize the whole gender-based violence aspect and move beyond it being just about men harming women. Because there's a lot of cases now, in my experience, that are coming up of men who have been afraid to actually speak about the fact that there are women from trauma spaces of the background where their families actually abused them.
Right.
That then creates a cycle of abuse.
Right.
And at times, where people learn abuse, be it male or female, it comes from in a way that they have been raised.
Yes.
So others go extreme. They either will never ever want to abuse another person, or others will mimic.
Right.
And because it's a socialization, which is what Bongosi spoke of, it's a socialization, and somebody is socialized in a particular way.
Right.
The gender-based violence also applies in the workplace. It's actually categorized within bullying. There's a lot of bullying where a man, only thing he knows is to be a provider. The only thing he knows is to be an authoritative figure. So when he's at work, he doesn't switch from I'm this authoritarian figure, I'm this man, to colleague. He still sees himself as that.
Right.
Yes. So then that's where you see it a lot.
Okay. And then
As bullyism, and that perpetuates in the workplace, and that's how it manifests in the workplace.
Right.
And yeah, so even at school, a child that is being abused at home becomes a bully. And you see that. The level of gender-based violence can go as far as sexual violence, where that can happen between partners, where there's sexual abuse, but at times it also goes as far as you have perpetrators being males and sexually violating children. That is still gender-based violence.
Right.
And it relates to power dynamics. It relates to what Bongosi was talking about, socialization, where other people don't even distinguish between this is now a child. It's a female that they're dealing with.
Right.
Yes.
And so displaying that power over
Yes, exactly. Which also brings the part where they get to threaten children to say that if you say anything, I will kill your mother, or I will kill your family, or whatever. And that then translates and overlaps into psychological violence and abuse in gender-based violence.
No, that definitely makes sense. And I think, at least for me, and I think a lot of just the general, out there dialogue around GBV is between partners, and whether it's a dating relationship or a marriage, that's most of what it is. But I like how you bring out that, no, it's between generations at times as well, or at school, on the playground, or between friends.
Yes.
Tobago, you brought up sexual violence between partners, and I just want to ask you to speak a little bit more into that, because I know sometimes there's also this belief that whatever sex happens in a partnership, like it's always consensual all the time. But reality is that that's not always the case.
Yes. Thank you, Rachel. So that actually relates to what we call intimate partner gender-based violence. So once that happens, what actually is the concern or the issue? At times you find the male partner will assume or will actually expect that the female partner must always be ready for a sexual encounter, whether they want it or whether they're tired, or it really doesn't matter.
Right.
They just want, when they want it, they want it, and they expect to get it.
Right. Because you are
He already yes,
partner.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes as far as the whole thing of now economical gender-based violence contexts. He would go as far as saying, I paid lobola for you if you paid lobola, or I feed you, you and your children. And therefore, this is what I want, and therefore you must provide it. And that is why then the issue there is a lot of women don't even know the difference of what consent is and what non-consensual sex is, or sexual encounters, for example.
Can you define that?
Consent is when you are willing as a person to also have a sexual encounter with that person. Non-consensual sex, actually, when you then categorize it as far as you even put in a legal definition, is rape.
Right.
And rape between partners is possible. There are partners who, for example, they're in a relationship, but they're actually not in the relationship anymore. There's no love anymore. The relationship has been strained, and one of them is feeling like, I don't want this anymore. But for some reason, they are still stuck in the relationship.
Right.
So consensual sex in that relationship is very rare. A lot of the time, it is forceful sex that is going to happen.
Because there's no relationship.
There's no relationship.
Anymore.
Yes.
Right.
So some women you find are in it because they've been socialized, as Bongosi had said, they've been socialized to believe that we are nyamazela, as the word is. So you stay, you stick it out, and as a woman, you don't leave your home, and you can't leave your husband. You must stay, even when you don't see. Even when the relationship is no more amicable, and there's no joy in it.
Right.
Yes, but they are forced to stay, and that also is the type of gender-based violence that is then perpetrated.
Right.
Even the man himself, at times, I will say this, even the man at times will be a perpetrator, yet not even know it. Because he's living in his socialized background, and psychologically that's all he knows.
Right.
He doesn't know anything different. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that we've got men engaged here.
Yes.
Because then it goes to show that we have men who are now taking the responsibility of standing up to say, let us teach, let us create awareness of what gender-based violence is. I always believe before we can start judging, can we please educate and create awareness of what it is, the context of what we are talking about.
Exactly.
Especially in African societies.
Right. And like, as you both brought up earlier too, where it's abusers were abused.
Yes.
Whether it's the bully on the playground or the wife that attacks the husband or the husband that attacks the wife. There is that background that they came from, at some point in their journey. And I wanted to ask Bongosi, so what, and especially in your work with Men Engage, like what trends are you seeing in Swaziland and Eswatini around GBV, especially probably in the last couple of years?
Okay. Thank you so much. The most thing that is persistent or that is prevalent around the issues of GBV, male involvement and GBV, is that, violence is learned. And, most of the way that we are being brought up, we are raised to believe that violence can be a means of resolving conflict. You take it from the way how our society believes in corporal punishment, and also the way how men are seen to be men that's of punishment Like, for instance, when a mother is remaining with children at home, it is very normal in Swaziland to hear the mother saying, your father is coming back, I will tell him everything that you've been doing.
Right.
So whenever the father comes, the children will know very well, the judge is here to give us all the necessary punishment for all the things that we've done. Which is to say, as a young boy growing up, you grow up knowing that I will be the one who will be responsible in ensuring that I enforce punishment, I enforce order. So when we grow up with that mentality that everything stops by me. I'm the one who then to decide, which will then translate to the issue of objectification of women and girls.
Right.
So when I feel like, when I count my asset within the house, I start with the wife to say this is amongst the assets. If ever I can move my bed outside the house, it means I can also move her outside and back into the house. Hence, I will then find it viable for me to say, if you don't want to have sex with me, it means I'm not going to pay school fees for the children.
Right.
Whereby women now will need to then calculate, it's either I enjoy the pain or my children who does not know anything enjoy the pain.
Right.
Whereby you will find in some instances whereby there were these kind of jokes around January, whereby you will hear issue of like baby mamas asking school fees money for children,
Right.
and then the baby father, the baby daddy will respond as if you come to me, please come to my house, where something like this. As if before you would get that particular school fees, you need first have sex with me.
Right.
And also the issue whereby you find men refusing to pay maintenance for their children because the partner now is in love with someone else. So those are some of the things which tells us that from our socialization, the way we were socialized tells us that women cannot decide for themselves. They cannot then decide what they want or what they don't want, which then turns out to say, if I say I have a girlfriend who's staying in Tlangano, and then when she says she wants to visit me, to me, even if she says it or not, it means I'm going to have sex with her.
Automatic.
That's why even when she arrives, I will not understand if she says she's not ready for sex.
Right. Because that expectation is there.
It is automatic that I would say, if ever you can't decide, you can't come decide when you're on your periods. Because it means you are coming here to give me sex.
Right.
So that does not come from, that's not something that we just get from the air. It's something that we have socialized with, and also that then introduces the issue of the cycle of violence. You'll find that we've got repeated survivors on issues of like this week she will be undergoing or he will be undergoing GBV, and then 2 weeks from now another cycle again. And also it then tends to be a coping mechanism. You will find that there are so many cases in this magistrate court over a single. The survivor is the same, but it's different people. Whereby at times you will feel like, now the problem is the person that is the complainant or the victim on this issue. Whereas we fail to understand that GBV has tended to be a coping mechanism for this individual. Even for parents, women in marriage, you'll find that I will target, if ever in 2 weeks' time, as a woman, I know that children will need money in school. I will provoke my husband so that he beats me. When he beats me, after beating me, he will be begging me, so he will do anything that I will ask. That's when I will introduce the issue of school fees, of paying school fees, and he will pay it because he is begging me not to take the issue to the police station. So that's the cycle of violence, whereby there is the honeymoon phase, whereby everything is okay. So when everything is okay, I will ask anything, and he will give it to me, or she will give it to me. And then there is a tension building, whereby you can tell that now we were outside the honeymoon phase. Now the tension is building, and then there is explosion whereby he beats you. When he beats you, and then we are moving back to the honeymoon phase whereby you are begging. So a lot of people in the country, they are living through that cycle of violence, which then makes it hard at times. It also makes it clear that we really need to make sure that we strengthen our preventative measures. Because my sister has mentioned the issue of raising a child in an abusive environment will make the child to mimic the acts that is currently happening. So if ever we as a country, we believe that in terms of telling children, the best way of resolving conflict is through violence, by the way how we use corporal punishment. It will mean that we'll still have this society that believes when you cannot resolve a conflict without beating each other. By merely communicating each other, you feel like you haven't done enough. I just need to beat this particular
because that's what they've seen.
Because that's what they've seen. And they've seen at home, they've seen in their communities. If ever the parents, they are trying to correct their children to say, you've done this thing wrong, I will take you to the police station and the police will beat you up. So all that, it makes the child to understand that whenever you want to resolve a conflict, you can never guarantee yourself that you've resolved any particular conflict without using violence, which then makes us to experience these high cases of gender-based violence. And also, I really want to highlight this issue that, gender-based violence, even those cases of femicides that are currently taking place, they did not start with being femicides. He will just slap you one day, and then he or she will feel like, no, now we are used to slapping.
Let me get away with it.
And also it will escalate until to the point whereby you die. Which is why it is very much important to alert the public. Just the time your partner says, I will beat you, kind of know. That is enough for you to make your decision to protect yourself, because the next thing he or she will not warn you. He or she will just do it.
And may I add to that, one thing that we always forget and omit to talk about is how gender-based violence is perpetrated as well within religion. We have a tendency to actually not, because religion or religious spaces are ideally supposed to be a safe space. But there's a lot of gender-based violence that happens within the church itself. The patriarchy that is within the church, where a lot of even the women who are, for example, the wives to the pastor, priest, or the different, they tend to turn a blind eye. Even when they see that, for example, these leaders in the church are sexual predators, are people that are very abusive, because highly possibly they also endure the same thing at home. And within the religious divinations or all the religious spaces, how gender-based violence is actually perpetrated also relates to fear. And that gender-based violence is power dynamics, fear of what this person could do to you if you do not play along. You know what I mean? At work, fear of being fired, fear of the fact that, my children, they need bread, they need food on the table, and I'm a single parent. You will endure being, victimized and bullied, and as even sexual violence at work. There's a lot of sexual harassment at work that goes on. There's sexual harassment, then there's sexual assault that takes place at work. That forms as gender-based violence. So gender-based violence is not just within two people who love each other or are in a relationship. The fact that some people at work can actually say, if you want a promotion, you need to sleep with me. I saw that a lot in this country. I'll speak for this country because it's home.
Right.
You know, it is at the highest level that I've ever seen in any space that I've lived in. And I've lived outside of this country before. So even when you need a contract, there are people that will be like, you know what you need to do. So COVID as well has played a huge role in perpetuating, or in fact in instigating opportunities of gender-based violence. People are now stuck at home because they had to work from home. And having to work from home, you have now the child, the father, and the mother, and the nanny, everybody in one space. And they're not used to that. School is actually a space of escape.
It's a safe place away from the
yes,
chaos.
Exactly. Work is a space of escape. You were so used to leaving very early in the morning, getting to work, spend the rest of your day there, and then from there you go home, you eat, you sleep. COVID came in, everybody had to be stuck in one place. People couldn't go out, there were no social events, they couldn't go to church, so people were frustrated. Psychologically, it's not what people are used to. It's not what they're socialized to live. So COVID played a major role in shifting and enhancing a lot of the gender-based violence that we see. There were a lot of divorces as well, the highest ever in Eswatini because of COVID. People realized that I live with a person that I don't know. And I don't know how to engage with this person. I don't know who this person is. So gender-based violence also relates to self-awareness and mental health. It's a mental health issue. When people actually have literally problems with mental health, people have inadequacy problems. People feel like they're not enough. Men lost jobs. A lot of women actually, some of them gained jobs because the disaster management required more nurses, more females, and more females tend to go into becoming volunteers. And so now a lot of men also felt inadequate because from being provider to now having to rely on a woman financially, it tipped the power dynamics. That also then, the only thing that also happened was at times you'd find men feeling inadequate, feeling jealous, feeling they constantly were possessive now. And obsessive in a way. So women at times also then discovered, I can actually be independent. I don't need this person. So that also is a dynamic. Once people become more self-aware of what they're capable of doing. It relates back to what Bongos was talking about, that once he slaps you once, you must know he's going to do it forever. Same as with women. Once you start learning that you actually can be independent, you start understanding that I actually don't need this person. That is if you had a relationship that was based on this one is just a provider. You realize you don't need,
and then when
because you are now providing for yourself.
And that
sometimes then psychologically what we call revenge abuse. Once, for example, the victim realizes that this perpetrator is now powerless, they literally can use certain methods like financially, for example, or whatever way to actually revenge for what this other person has done. So it literally does not end. It's the cycle that he's talking about. I've had clients where they talk to me from a psychological perspective, a woman that cannot understand not being in an abusive relationship. Her love language is being physically abused. And that is painful to see. That person is in a dark space. Mentally, they are in such a hole to the point where they cannot imagine their life without abuse. And when you go deeper, you realize this person was actually abused at home by a relative, by a father, an uncle, or you know what I mean, someone in the community. It's the only thing they know. They normalized it. You see, now we're living in COVID and we're saying the new normal. It's the same as gender-based violence. The source where it comes from,
and then it just
spirals and keeps you understand
generations and everything. That's heavy. That's a lot of heavy.
It's quite a lot.
Topics, heavy situations. in an effort to end on a hopeful note. So, and in the spirit of creating the self-awareness, maybe I'm listening to this podcast or a friend sent it to me or, whatever the situation, and I realize I'm experiencing GBV, or I realize that my sister is experiencing GBV or my child. What do I do? What should I do with that? What's available?
I can speak to what is available, what I know of. I know that there's different organizations, NGOs that actually offer free counseling. I know Phumelela, for example, does that. I know there's a psychological first aid that does that. There is Madrutu as well, which was started by DPM and some psychologists. And I know that there's also Swaga. I've had to refer people to Swaga, for example, to be able to get counseling. And then there's some social workers as well that are really involved in the communities. And I guess there needs to be a bigger list, a database, I'm assuming, that would actually have all of those details. There's the psychiatric center in Manzini, and other clients psychologists are taking private clients. I'm not sure if they will.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe I can add to the list that my sister Mandovega just shared, is that maybe I can say we have the toll-free line, which is you can reach through even with your cell phone, both MTN and Swazi Mobile. It's 951. So you are able to report gender-based violence. And also you can reach Swaga through the SMS platform that you report, whereby you first SMS Swaga to 8500, whereby after joining in, then you can just send you report your case, and then you get a support. And also maybe it will be good to even highlight that we also encourage as men engage to even seek assistance in terms of how you can maybe sessions, even if the abuse hasn't happened, just to have the conversation and the engagement sessions, because at times one abuses without knowing that what I'm doing is abuse. And also you can even tell that maybe based on my personal experiences, I've been abused before, and which can lead for me to be a perpetrator as well. So how then can we engage on such issues? Because some of these issues, when Nondove was touching on the issue of the religious setup, there is most of the time in the church happens, the false pretense of fraudulent means rape. Which whereby you are made to believe that something else is being done to you, whereas sex is taking place. Which is something that is very rife, and also it's also something that is happening with traditional healers, whereby they will say they are healing you from from certain spirits, whereas they are now having a sexual intercourse with you, and you are made to believe something else is happening to you, which is something that is also very rife, which is why as Men Engage Network we do have those capacity buildings, trainings with religious leaders, with traditional leaders, whereby we've seen some of the churches, like I can make an example of the Anglican Church, whereby before you serve in any leadership position, you need to present your fingerprints to show that you are not a perpetrator. So that is being done on an annual basis, which is something part of the achievement. And also they have a gender desk. Even if there is a gender-based violence case reported, they do not just say let's pray. Whilst they are praying, and then they let the law take its full course. They are the ones also who takes you to the police station to say, this is the survival of gender-based violence, and then this case be taken into consideration. Because, some of the reasons why we've got so much gender-based violence cases is the fact that we don't report them. Some of the cases goes unreported. So I think it would be very much important, even if you get those invitations to come and have these engagement sessions and touch on issues of socialization, and also deconstruct or dismantle patriarchy in a way that we look at each other as brothers and sisters, not as others as human beings and others as objects.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really amazing insight and really powerful topics to discuss. And just, it's not an unfamiliar topic in this realm. We're starting to have these conversations. But thank you both for what you do in your organizations as a psychologist, taking the clients and engaging in the communities. And thank you for being here with us today and just, offering your perspective on what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe, Rachel, what I'd love to then close with is to say, in our sessions, I normally then ask this question to everyone to say, imagine yourself that you are now your partner. You may be a woman.
Right.
Imagine yourself as your husband or your boyfriend. Or as a man, imagine yourself as your girlfriend or as your wife. Will you be happy to have a partner such as yourself?
That's a good question. That's a powerful question.
And then if ever then you cannot be happy to have such a partner, then you must change because the current partner is not happy as well.
Yeah.
So you cannot imagine yourself not being able to withstand the kind of a partner that you are.
Right.
And then expect your partner to be happy to have a partner like you.
Right. Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much.